Your Town Matters is funded by the Government of Canada through the Local Journalism Initiative and supported by Cactus Media, Canada's independent community television association.
I'm Vicki Hogarth and welcome to Your Town Matters. My guest today is the Mayor of the Town of St. Andrews, Brad Henderson. Thank you for being here today again, Brad.
Great to be here as always.
So, big news right off the bat. Census 2021 revealed that St. Andrews is the fastest growing town, even among cities by population in New Brunswick.
That's correct. So communities of 2,000 people or more, St. Andrews was the fastest growing in the census over the last 5 years, 14.7% growth, which is quite significant as we are now considered a community of 2,000 people, which we weren't for a number of years. In fact, if I look at the last census, I was just a newly appointed deputy mayor at that point, and it was a decline on the previous census of our population. And it was not just one census, but it was census after census. Our population was declining. Our average age was almost over a 5-year period. Our average age of our community would go up 5 years. So we were very much an aging community. So to get this refreshing news that not only did we stop the decline, but we actually grew, I think everyone that sits around a lot of different tables in this community, whether the Chamber or the BIA, we always said that we could use another 500 to 1,000 people. Well, I guess we're headed in the right direction. Obviously,
challenges come with growth too, but it is a very positive thing. So I don't know, I'll save housing as the second topic, but first let's talk about municipal reform and how this relates. Obviously, we do have elections coming up. We're growing as a community. Entity 56, we're currently called for next fall as we add in Bayside to the mix. Can you tell me a little bit more about, and Shamcook as well, how it's going to work in terms of council's growth?
Yes, so as far as the municipal reform, there's a facilitator named Don Fitzgerald, and he's meeting with us. He was involved with the Regional Service Commission in Fredericton, but he was appointed to our area. He's been meeting with myself as well as the town staff and the LSD reps from Shamcook and Bayside. And we've had a number of meetings where we're starting to work through that process. There's still a lot of unknowns, but there's some decisions that we've already made. The first thing that we had to do is actually determine what our municipal boundaries are. For Shamcook, Bayside, they're already established in St. Andrews, so our process was fairly easy considering there's some LSDs in the province that are getting kind of cut in half. Our process was easy. The only thing that we changed is originally on the map that we got, Navy Island wasn't on ours, and Navy Island, I think it was just something that was forgotten accidentally by the province. Navy Island is very much part of the town of St. Andrews, and it's very important because it's what we're looking at when we look at our bay, and as well as who knows what the future opportunities are. If it wasn't within the community, what happens if heavy industry ever was involved there, or anything like that? We want to weigh in as a community on Navy Island. So we got that fixed, so that one was done. Then the second thing that we did is we did discuss what a new council would look like with Shamcook Bayside. And there was a lot of back and forth. If you look at population of Shamcook and Bayside together, it's about 50% of what St. Andrews is. So when you look at population, you'd say if you have 6 council seats in St. Andrews, 3 make sense for the LSD. So there was a lot of different conversations about what that could look like. Should they be all at large? Meaning that if you lived in Shamcook or Bayside, you could run for one of 3 positions. Then they talked about maybe where you have 1 from Shamcook, 1 from Bayside, and 1 at large. Anyway, it went back to the province. The province came back and said the 3 is what we would like to do. And we'll do 2 from Shamcook because they're about double the population of what Bayside is, and 1 from Bayside. So 9 councillors. I think that's probably only going to be for the remainder of this term. I think 9 councillors and a mayor for a town of the size of St. Andrews, Bayside, and Shamcook would be. Cities don't have 9 councillors, so it's a little much. So I think when they go to the next election after that, I think that the representatives all together will talk about what is the proper situation, maybe 4 from St. Andrews, 2 from Shamcook Bayside for 6 councillors like we have today.
Obviously, there's going to be, I'm sure, so many obstacles as we navigate it, especially maybe somebody might not want to run from one of the other areas. There's always those challenges too. That's
a legitimate one. And then the next one that we're talking about is actually the name of our community, which I'm fairly passionate about maintaining. We're definitely not going to go with Entity 56, But you know, when you get 2 communities, and I'll use this example because they're close to us. When you got St. George and Blacks Harbour, you know, what does it become? I know a lot of communities put a hyphen in between it, but I don't think you're going to see us called St. Andrews Shamcook Bayside, but I look forward to having those conversations in the near future. In my mind, I lived in Halifax for a while, so there was the Halifax Regional Municipality. I lived in Bedford and Sackville while I was there, but I was part of Halifax. So if you want, one of the things I heard during the white paper, so the whole process, was that communities didn't want to lose their identity. Well, if you take the name Shamcook and Bayside away from Shamcook Bayside, that is losing their identity in my mind. So I hope there's a way in which we could be like a St. Andrews Regional Municipality, whatever the right term is around that we all agree on. But if you live in Shamcook, you still live in Shamcook. You live in Bayside, you still live in Bayside. And if you live in St. Andrews, you still live in St. Andrews. And I can't see it being any other way than that.
No, and I would think too is when you look at cities, right? You often, if you're in the city, talk about the neighborhood you live in and refer to yourself as part of that neighborhood. So it would be along those lines. And definitely it would be quite sad to lose the marketing power of the St. Andrews by the Sea internationally known location.
It would make absolutely no sense to take away. It's a historic name. If you look at the brand itself for tourism, if you look at the momentum that we have with population growth, but that didn't just happen by coincidence. I know the pandemic weighed in. I know that people were looking for alternative kind of way of living, where get away from the cities. St. Andrews, you know, it can be vibrant, but you could go around a corner and have a beach to yourself. So I think they gravitated. But why were we number one? Because you can get that probably in some other communities, but if you look at the efforts that a lot of people in this community have done to put St. Andrews on the map, you know, all the premiers of Canada were just recently here. The Prime Minister's first time the cabinet was here. We had, you know, Amazing Race filmed here. We had Best Destination in Canada. All these things continue to put St. Andrews on the map, and more people look at it and say, hey, let's check this out. And we do know the number one way that we recruit new residents is people visit St. Andrews, fall in love with it, and they move here is probably the most popular way in which we recruit. So to take that away and call us something, you know, a historic different name, it just doesn't make any sense to me.
All those events and acclaims that happened that you just mentioned, I know they all happened within the last 6 years. That's how long I've moved back to be near my family, so I can say those definitely all happened in this little town, these huge scale events in the last 6 years. So that's pretty incredible. But with that and with the population growth, I know we talk about the housing crisis, but St. Andrews is being really proactive. Can you talk about how the town is working with different groups to address this crisis?
There's a lot to that one. We'll talk about development, but first we'll talk about zoning. So right now, council is looking at the zoning bylaw, and they're looking at a way in which they can increase the density of our community. We only have so much space within our municipal boundaries, and our population is growing. And if you look at the price of building right now, it's extremely high. So we've got to start looking at maybe not these beautiful heritage homes on 1 acre lots that aren't affordable for the first time home buyer, or not affordable for a senior looking to downsize, and say, how can we get higher density housing? Talk about garden homes, talk about apartments, talk about townhouses. So in order to do that, our zoning bylaw, if you talk to developers, you would actually say that St. Andrews is not development friendly. And it is, you could say that for good reason, because we are a historic and heritage community, so you don't want to lose that identity. But it's a balancing game. Is we do need to open our eyes to realize that there's a lot of people in our community that can't afford to live here anymore. And doing the same thing, you're going to get the same result. So right now, they're looking at making a few changes. It hasn't even gone to first reading yet, but we're looking at, like, one debate was, if you have an apartment in St. Andrews right now, it has to have 1.25 parking spots per unit. And they're talking about changing that to 1. And it doesn't sound significant, but if you're a developer on a parcel of land, it is significant. They don't have the space to put in, you know, 6 units versus 4 as a result. So you talk about a townhouse, how many feet you've got to have a frontage on the road. reducing that, but it's a balancing game because you don't want to lose the characteristics and identity of your community, what makes it special, but in the same sense you want to be open-minded to say, you know, we've got to make this place a little bit more development friendly as well. So there's places in the community that you could do development that would not take away from the historic charm of St. Andrews. So that's what we're really trying to work on. On the other side of it is dealing directly with developers. So St. Andrews used to basically sit down with developers and say, if you want to build something, you got to pay to put the services in, you've got to pay this. And there's communities all over New Brunswick, all around Canada that are saying, come here, we'll help you out. So St. Andrews has changed its mind frame a little bit to say that we have got to work with private developers to spur development on certain kinds of houses, in particular affordable housing. The past month we had 2 projects that the town council actually put funds towards. So to put in the services, so sewer and water. The first one would be Van Horn Garden Homes, which would be on the corner of Bar Road and Mowat Drive. They're looking to build up to 25 units there, and they required about $80,000 to put in services. So the town of St. Andrews is going to put $80,000 into that once the development agreement is written up. But here's the thing about these, it's a lot of money, $80,000, small community. But if you look at the anticipated taxes that we get in from this new development, it'll pay for itself in literally 2 years. So why are we not helping make this a reality when people are looking for housing? And then the other one is Victoria Terrace, which is kind of almost towards the entrance of Kingsbury Garden. They were looking for $122,000 for 10 units, and the same thing, council is going to help them put in the services. That payback takes a little bit longer, but it still pays itself back in about 3.5 years. So again, why are we not encouraging this development? That's 35 new smaller units, either townhouses, both rentals and to buy, that we have in our community that we wouldn't have had if we didn't enter the scene. So we're doing business a little differently, but you know, we are being selective. We did turn down a couple opportunities as well because the payback took so long. And as well, we are very cognizant of this is not our money. This is the taxpayer of St. Andrews. So when it comes to private development, we have to be strategic.
You mentioned Bar Road. I just want to clarify. Last council meeting, there was I think misinterpretation of a bylaw that can you just clarify what was mentioned about closure of one part of Bar Road? It wasn't what people interpreted.
So whenever you go to change a bylaw, you have to do 3 readings, and part of it you have to have a hearing of objections. And 95%, if not higher, of the time we have a hearing of objections in St. Andrews. Nobody even writes in, nobody attends it, but it's just giving them the opportunity. I actually assumed that was going to be the case for this particular one. So the wording was the stop, up, and permanent closure of the Bar Road. So the Bar Road back in the 80s was actually adjusted. It was straightened a little bit. There was a curve in it right on the corner of Bar Road and Champlain. But the old surveys that were registered actually indicated that the road still went where it doesn't. So we had to clean it up because it should have been done years ago. So the legal term is called the permanent and stop up and closure of where the road used to be. So somehow in the community it got out that we were closing the Bar Road, and in order to get to Minister's Island, for example, you'd have to go down Champlain through the subdivision and down. So rightfully, a bunch of people that heard that rumor start writing in the night before, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And it took a little bit to figure it out. There was, I think, over a dozen people at the hearing of objections that were all zoomed in, ready to say, what are you thinking? And then when we did a second presentation to clarify what I had heard in the community, everyone was like, oh, okay, because really the Bar Road, nothing's changing. But there was a scare in the community. So you can see that communication and having these conversations with you, they're vitally important, because sometimes, you know, the way something's worded, people can obviously assume it means something else. Yeah,
so definitely good to clarify that. I also wanted to talk to you on the topic of town council salaries and town staff salaries. Obviously, I think Fredericton has made the news lately for the big increase that they are having there, and that's to deal in part with inflation, but definitely a dramatic one. What is happening here in St. Andrews?
Yeah, so we actually debated ours kind of, I think, just a couple days before Fredericton, and there's no doubt about it, inflation is high. Everybody feels it, not just at the gas pumps, but you're feeling it at the grocery store, probably almost every area of your life. Depending which indicator or which way that you calculate it, most people are saying inflation was actually over over 5%, which is extremely high. So the town of St. Andrews, with their staff and council, have a policy where it's reviewed annually, and it was budgeted at 2% this year when we set the budget, because it typically is right around there. It's somewhere between 1.5% to 2.25%. So obviously we didn't budget for such a large increase. So we had some significant conversation around what should we do. The reality is not everybody in the world that has a job gets a 5.5% increase because inflation went up 5.5%. So where we settled was 3% for staff. And there's, if you look at our budget, there's some vacancies we have within town staff, which will help offset that with our budget. But I think the thing that related to your comment on Fredericton is I am proud of council. I'm not a big believer in councils giving themselves raises. If you're going to give a raise, you do it on the way out the door where you're having an election, so the next council has an opportunity. You don't give yourself, if everybody in the world could give themselves a raise and vote it in, I'm sure they would. So it's not really fair. So council actually held theirs at 0% raise. They said we'll deal with it in the future. But right now there's a lot of people having hard times. And if anyone sees what actually municipal politicians make, you're not in it for the money, you're in it for the community. Not to say that you couldn't use the extra dollars, everyone could, but the 0% will help make staff have that extra from 2% to 3% as well. So I'm very proud that council froze those salaries, which I think was the right thing to do when you're determining your own number.
Another thing on the table for council right now is setting policing priorities. Can you tell me what's going on that front?
Yes, so every year we have an opportunity to weigh in on policing priorities. When you get into St. Andrews, we're a little different than everybody else around us. We have a specific contract where we have a municipal contract with policing. Everybody else is on a regional model. And it's been a little source of friction between the town and RCMP in the past, in the sense that some of the town in the past thought that we should have 3 specific officers for St. Andrews. In reality, what we're seeing is a regional policing model. So every year we do get to set our priorities and we submit them to the RCMP. So the 3 that we selected for this year, the first one was basically an increase in presence. So staffing levels, visibility. I would not say that the town of St. Andrews has a crime problem, but in the same sense, if there's ever an emergency, you want to know that RCMP is close by. And there's no question about it that the RCMP, if you read headlines and do some research, I think that they're struggling to maintain their staffing levels for a number of different reasons, whether it be recruitment, whether it be officers out on different reasons, maybe PTSD and other things. There's a lot of different reasons why they're having trouble staffing across Canada. But it's to a point now where I think residents are starting to notice that our police presence isn't as strong as it should be. So that is the number 1 priority. The number 2 is I did get a lot more emails and messages and concerns over this last year about speeding than I had the previous 3 years combined. So the actual speeding in town is a concern. So that's number 2. And then number 3 is very consistent, would be drug reduction, drug enforcement. That's not just a St. Andrews issue. I would like to think that our challenges aren't as big as some other communities, but to say that it's not an issue here, that wouldn't be correct either. That's across Canada for that matter. So we want them to continue to focus on that. So those would be the 3 main priorities. And we also had a meeting with the RCMP to talk about their staffing levels, one-on-one with them, in order to try to improve some of the things and improve communication.
All right. Well, the Premier just announced that the mandatory order for New Brunswick ending March 14th. Masking's going away too. St. Andrews was definitely a leader in the province for how you navigated COVID-19, especially in a busy tourism season. How are you anticipating going into this reopening? It's a really different way to look at it going into this summer.
It is. To be honest, it's almost like I almost call it like a paradigm. You're so used to thinking one way, it's going to be a big change for people. I've talked to people in the community, and when they hear that an event's going to happen, they're like, "This is kind of weird." I know that particular. I'm part of organizing a curling bonspiel, and it happens to be the weekend that all of a sudden the no masking policy kind of takes into effect. So. It's going to be a change, but I'm actually welcoming it in the sense that I am concerned about the amount of hospital beds that we have in our province. You want to make sure that any public health measure you're removing, that the system can handle it. But in the same sense, I don't know about you, but I'm tired of the division. I'm tired of neighbor versus neighbor. I'm tired of social media going on there and hearing people bicker about it. at the end of the day, you know, we're one community. Despite what my views are, what someone else's views are, or what anyone's views are, is it doesn't mean you're not a good person. So I don't think that the things that happen in Ottawa, I understand people are frustrated, but when you have people that are actually protesting in a legal manner, just because you're against something doesn't give you the right to break the laws. And again, I know people are frustrated, but I think that actually reducing these reductions hopefully will get us to a point where we feel like not just one community, one country again. And you know, I will say that based on the variants, they're definitely losing punch. And so people put a lot more thought into this than obviously I have. So I'm welcoming it, and I will say that that I'm optimistic that it will do nothing but help St. Andrews as far as visitors, tourism, get people out and about. It'll help local restaurants, not even have to reduce the seating. There's restaurants that only have a couple tables in it. If you look at their financial model, it probably didn't make sense. They were just holding on. So to give them some hope, there's a lot of reasons to be positive about it. But with that being said, as you know, you're cautiously optimistic. We've seen in the past that we've gone from, you know, the red to the yellow to the green system, and then it goes back. So you're hoping that everything goes as planned, that there's not a new variant that comes up that's going to pack more punch. But I'm cautiously optimistic that the old times that we came to love and enjoy can return. I just got back from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I can tell you that people do still wear masks there. But other than that, life is back to pretty much normal. Like you know, they still have their events and their gatherings, so it looks like that's the direction we're heading now. So I know a lot of people are looking forward to it.
There was a silver lining in some degree to the pandemic for St. Andrews in that New Brunswickers, a lot of New Brunswickers from the north, from the far east, discovered St. Andrews, some for the first time. Are you anticipating a more than busy tourism season this year, now that it will likely be open to all, and we're expecting even the U.S. border to be a little bit easier to go back and forth soon?
So my day job at Kingsbury, we actually meet with Minister's Island and Huntsman, and we talk about different marketing strategies and platforms to work together. It's something that we accomplished, I guess it was about 5 years ago now, and it's been a wonderful partnership. But we are anticipating, an increase again. Everybody is anticipating that New Brunswickers will continue to support us. We certainly prove that our community, as far as tourism, is more resilient than we ever thought it would be. And again, I say it every time, but I'm so thankful that New Brunswickers chose to come here. They circled the map, they gave us a destination. But if you look at strategies and talking to them, as I know that some of our partners are looking at specifically targeting northern New Brunswick, some French channels and things, because it really felt like the last 2 years we had more French-speaking visitors than we ever have. So the north really did discover the southern part of the province. And so strategies are changing. And then I think everybody's calling for a slight increase in kind of international travelers. With that being said, I think that people will travel, but it's not going to be the levels that we saw previous. It's going to take some time to build back up. But every indication that I have is it should be a busy year in St. Andrews. And of course, the biggest challenge we have is to make sure that we have enough staffing to keep restaurants open, hopefully more of them 7 days a week, because the demand is there. It's just the labor shortage that we're dealing with.
It was nice to have a conversation with Christy from the Treadwell Inn yesterday. She said she was taking tons of bookings for summer already. So we think of the Algonquin, but there's also so many other hotels and restaurants booking already for the summer season.
There is, and if you look at the Algonquin in the last few years, is they had a lot of long periods where they've been closed over the winter. They're not closing again. They're keeping it right open till the tourism season. Their bookings are up, and when you talk to people about what this summer looks like, whether it be Christie, whether it be the Algonquin or any provider, they'll tell you that bookings are already up, which is a healthy indicator. That's how I know with my day job we project it is based on what the hotels are seeing. You can almost see how strong a month's going to be based on the pre-bookings. It is a true indicator. So lots of reasons to believe that we can't have another great summer in St. Andrews. And of course, you know, there's a lot of things that are happening around the community, a lot of groups that are talking right now about improving some of the offerings that we have. Explore St. Andrews has got their feet under them as far as marketing our community. Visitor Information Center is kind of kicked off last year, but it's really growing. There's a lot of things that are really locally increasing our tourism offering. So we got to keep the momentum going, that's for sure.
Well, thank you for coming in today. I hope to see you in the future more in person at Council 2, less on Zoom. My guest today has been Brad Henderson, Mayor of the town of St. Andrews. I'm Vicki Hogarth. Thank you for watching Your Town Matters.